Today we're continuing to look at some passages in the Bible that talk about prayer and to glean some principles from those passages, but also think about some of the obstacles to prayer that the passage might address. And I think one or maybe two of the biggest obstacles to prayer are that we often don't know what to pray, and although we want to pray for God's will, we don't know what His will is. And there's a couple of verses in Romans 8 that address this. In Romans 8, starting in verse 26, "In the same way, the Spirit also helps our weakness. For we do not know how to pray as we should, but the Spirit Himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. And He who searches the heart knows what the mind of the Spirit is, because He intercedes for the saints according to the will of God." When we look at those verses, we see that it starts out in the same way. We kind of have to ask ourselves, in the same way as a what? And I think that refers back to verse 16, where Paul writes, "The Spirit Himself testifies with our spirit that we are the children of God." Right? The Holy Spirit is indwelling of us. The Holy Spirit's confirmation to us that we are God's children is a fact. And in the same way that the Holy Spirit confirms that we are God's children, the Holy Spirit also intercedes for us. That means that the Holy Spirit, in a sense, prays for us to God. And that answers some of the question of, I don't know what to pray, because the Holy Spirit does know what to pray. The verse tells us that He prays for us with groanings too deep for words. And often that's our problem. We don't have the words to express the longings and desires of our hearts. And yet the Spirit does, and He intercedes for us. And then also, the Holy Spirit always intercedes for us according to the will of God. So we don't need to worry that we're not asking for the right thing, or that if we don't ask in the right way, our prayers won't be answered. Because the Holy Spirit, the third person of the Trinity, is before God, interceding on our behalf, and always interceding according to God's will. And so the Holy Spirit, who understands our thoughts, our longings, our desires, the Holy Spirit takes those things and intercedes for us before God. So not knowing what to pray, worrying that we're not praying according to God's will, are really not things that we need to be super worried about. We need to obey the command to pray and trust that the Holy Spirit, just as we trust that the Spirit confirms that we are indeed God's children, trust that the Holy Spirit is interceding for us. I think that gives us a lot of freedom in our prayers. So I would encourage you today to remind yourself, I don't have to say all the right words. The Holy Spirit sees my heart and is interceding for me before the throne of God.